All right, Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. And of course, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. I'm loving Underdog Fantasy. Sign up using the link in the description and use that promo code Krug, Krueg, and they'll match you up to $100. All right, Thursday night football, Saints Jags. This is what I'm going with Underdog Fantasy wise. Chris Olave lower than 62.5 receiving yards. Travis Etienne Jr. higher than 63.5 rushing yards. Derek Carr lower than 238.5 passing yards. Alvin Kamara is back, but I'm going with lower than 53.5 rushing yards for Alvin. And Devin Lloyd's had a real nice year for the Jaguars, the former Utah Ute. I'm going higher than 6 combined tackles and assists for Devin Lloyd. Check out Underdog Fantasy, a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little bit about the 49ers here. Realistic and unrealistic um, targets in the trade market for the 49ers. Okay, a couple new developments have happened. The trade deadline's coming up in less than 2 weeks. October 31st is the NFL trade deadline. A couple guys that I had on the list as possible trade candidates for the Niners today are not trade candidates. Jeremy Chin, the Carolina linebacker, nickel corner, safety, jack of all trades. Carolina's 0-6, and there's no doubt they're going to make trades, and Scott Fitter is going to take calls on a number of their guys. But Chin is now out for the next 6 weeks with a significant quad injury. It's not going to require surgery, but it's going to push well past the trade deadline, and I think that takes him as a chess piece off the board. So if you've been following me, you've been knowing that I'm an advocate for the 49ers trying to get Jeremy Chin, keep him from the Eagles, looking at him as a almost an ideal guy to defend Travis Kelce if the Niners and Chiefs got in the Super Bowl head-to-head again. I don't think Chin's going to be dealt, and if he is going to be dealt, he's not going to be healthy for a while. So I think you got to take that piece off the board. Another piece off the board, Mecole Hardman, the wide receiver from the Jets, the speedster, going back to Kansas City today. That trade was announced this afternoon. So Mecole Hardman, who started with KC, now goes back to KC from the Jets, and he's no longer on the board. And that was a receiver that I thought the Niners could have some interest in. So as far as Jeremy Chin and Mecole Hardman, those guys no longer realistic trade options. All right, what do the Niners need? What's realistic? What's unrealistic? Let's start with the unrealistic. I think Patrick Surtain is unrealistic. Surtain's going to cost you probably multiple high picks, including next year's number one. He's a blue chip corner. I just don't think you move blue chip corners in the prime of their career who are not making a lot of money and haven't even played their best football necessarily. So I think Denver definitely is open for business, and I think they'll be willing to move anybody, but you're going to have to absolutely bowl them over to get Patrick Surtain out of there, and I just don't think he's going anywhere. So Surtain, I think, is unrealistic. That's number one. Defensive ends. Now, I think there's going to be some defensive ends that are realistic, and we'll hit them in just a second. But I think Brian Burns and Danielle Hunter are probably unrealistic, at least for the 49ers. I've heard the Raiders are going to try to load up on a big offer for Brian Burns, trying to replace Chandler Jones opposite Max Crosby. And I think Burns could wind up in Vegas, maybe for multiple picks, including the Raiders' number one pick next year. Burns is a superstar. There's no question. Danielle Hunter is a star. He's leading the NFL right now with 8 sacks. The Minnesota Vikings defensive end is fantastic. Heck, the Niners would love to see him dealt today. So then that means they don't have to face him on Monday night. That would be something they'd love to see. But I just don't picture the 49ers trading for Danielle Hunter at this point. He's got a big contract. He's a great player. It's going to cost you a ton to get him. So I would say, even though those are the guys that get the biggest headlines, Brian Burns, Danielle, you talk trade deadline with Niner fans, they'll say, hey, they could get Patrick Surtain or Brian Burns or Danielle Hunter. I don't think those guys are realistic. I really don't. I think if you're going to set your sights, you're going to have to kind of set your sights below those guys. All right, so what do the 49ers actually need? What do they theoretically need? Well, a lot of people would say, hey, they need offensive line help. They need O-line help. But do they really need O-line help, and can they get it? I would say it's very unrealistic that they're going to be able to find an offensive tackle that's better than Trent Williams or Colton McKivitz at this point. McKivitz shut out DeMarcus Lawrence of the Cowboys a couple weeks ago and only allowed one pressure against the Browns. So I think the Colton McKivitz isn't good enough complaining session probably needs to come to an end. Is he an ideal tackle? Maybe not. Is he a star? No. But I think he's the best they've got, and I think he's probably the best they're going to be able to do. I really don't think that there's anybody out there in the trade market. I know people have said Garrett Bowles, and that's a name that has come up. And I just don't, Garrett Bowles is a nice player. Don't get me wrong. Garrett Bowles is really nice. I mean, he'd be a very nice addition. He's the Broncos starting left tackle. He's reportedly on the block. He's got a pro football focus grade of 72.8. He's only allowed one sack all year. Historically, he's been a top 20 tackle in the league. But he does make $16 million next year. And I don't know that they can take on Bowles' contract. I think they would, the money and the draft pick compensation would both be prohibitive. If the Niners are going to go for an offensive tackle, I think it's much more likely that they sign Lael Collins, the 30-year-old free agent, 6'4", 320. He got medical clearance from his doctor coming off the ACL and the MCL surgery. He's met with teams, and Niners have not been mentioned as having interest, but to me, that's the price point. I don't think they're going to make a trade for a tackle. I could see them signing a Lael Collins before they actually made any kind of a trade for an offensive tackle. So offensive tackle, I think, is off the board. So what do the 49ers need with 2 weeks left? Well, I think they could use a tight end. Zach Ertz and Mike Gesicki come to mind. Ertz is a Bay Area kid, went to school in the East Bay. Is a veteran at this point. The Niners wanted to go with Cam Latu. They drafted him in the third round. He's now on season-ending IR. So Ertz is 32. He's 6'5", 250. He's a proven player, proven receiver, proven blocker. He's got 24 catches for 168 yards and a touchdown this year. Why is he unrealistic? Because it's hard to picture Arizona trading him in the division. Mike Gesicki, though, makes sense. New England already has Hunter Henry, who's their number one. Gesicki's a real nice player. He's a veteran. He can catch. He can definitely help the 49ers in their two tight end set. I think that makes a little sense. So if you're looking for a tight end, maybe Mike Gesicki makes sense. Wide receiver wise, I don't think I think Davante Adams is unrealistic. Now Mecole Hardman is off the board. Rondale Moore would be ideal, the Arizona Cardinals speedster. But once again, I think that's kind of unrealistic. I think the Niners may have to go with what they've got. They've got Willie Snead, and they've got Tay Martin. They got Danny Gray coming back. They've got Chris Conley. They've got Isaiah Winstead. They've got receiver depth on their practice squad. And, of course, they've already got a pretty good receiving core with Juwan and Debo and Ayuk, Ray. So I kind of think unless they could get Rondale Moore out of Arizona, and once again, is Arizona going to be in a rush to help the Niners? Probably not. If you could get Rondale Moore, I'd be interested. Other than that, I think wide receiver is an unrealistic target. I don't see wide receiver as being an area that they can improve, realistically. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So really, what does it come down to? I think there's two areas where the 49ers, outside of tight end with Gesicki or Zach Ertz, that they can improve going into the trade deadline: cornerback and defensive line. And so let's talk about those two positions. One, at cornerback, I don't think Surtain's available, as I told you. I don't think he's a gettable player. Sean Murphy Bunting is in Tennessee. Rand Carthon and John Lynch have a very good healthy respect for one another and obviously a great relationship. That is interesting. Sean Murphy Bunting, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, I think could probably be had. He's actually a pretty good football player, and that would be interesting. That would be a guy that makes a little sense. I could see happening. There's no doubt that the Titans are looking to move guys. They're 2-4. They're probably looking to the future. They'd love a little draft pick compensation back, and Sean Murphy Bunting would be on the very short list. Another name out there is Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson, the Chicago Bears corner, is, an interesting report. Reports out of Chicago indicate the Niners have asked for about the availability of Johnson. He was in the top 6 in the league in his rookie year in passes defended. He has a top 10 coverage grade of 84.1 from PFF this season. He's played limited snaps because of injury, but you know, and it's going to cost you though. I mean, if they're looking at getting a 4th round pick if they let him walk at the end of the year in compensation. So if you're the 49ers, I think you'd have to almost go into that knowing you're going to trade your 3rd round draft choice for Jalen Johnson. You got Philly out there looking for secondary help. Dallas and Pittsburgh are looking for cornerback help. Johnson's 6 feet, 196 pounds, only 24 years of age. I think he is a very attractive option, and you may have to trade your 2nd round pick. So Sean Murphy Bunting, maybe a little cheaper. Jalen Johnson, maybe a little bit more expensive. There's also Dante Jackson, who was in Carolina with Steve Wilks last year. And Dante Jackson is a veteran corner, and you could probably get him for a day 3 pick. One other guy to kind of keep your eye on with Dre Greenlaw out. Do the Niners need a little bit of depth at linebacker? I mean, I think without Greenlaw, their run defense got exposed at linebacker. There's Frankie Louvu from Carolina, who's a 27-year-old linebacker. Steve Wilks is familiar with him from his time in Carolina. Louvu's got 27 tackles this year and 4 sacks and a Pro Football Focus grade of 67.8. He is a free agent at the end of the year, but man, Wilks, I'm sure, would love Louvu. Now, Jalen Graham and D. Winters are the future for the Niners at linebacker, but I don't know that either could be trusted this year taking the proper run fits. And maybe a guy like Frankie Louvu could give Wilks a blitzing linebacker who's a little bit more trustworthy this year. So that's one guy to look at linebacker that maybe could fill a need for the 49ers. So, yeah, cornerback-wise, I think you're looking at Sean Murphy Bunting, Jalen Johnson, Dante Jackson, something like that. Those are the guys that are out there. Tight end-wise, you're looking at Zach Ertz, Mike Gesicki. Wide receiver, maybe you're looking at Rondale Moore, maybe a Kendrick Bourne, who's on New England's team and he knows the Niner offense well. Let's talk defensive ends. The Niners have already picked up Randy Gregory. As I told you before, I don't think Brian Burns and Danielle Hunter are realistic options. I just don't, those guys seem like, it would cost way too much and it would just be prohibitive. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it just doesn't seem like that looks like a fit. So who else could you possibly get? Well, here's a couple names. One, Carl Lawson. Now, he makes a lot of money, but he's a free agent at the end of the year. The Jets have a bunch of depth on the defensive end spot. Lawson is not playing that much. You might be able to get him. He's attractive. The guy who I think would be my target number 1 if I'm looking to add more defensive end depth is the Patriots' Josh Uche, the former Michigan Wolverine. Pats are 1-5, and Uche's only 25 years old. He leads the Patriots in pressures with 17. He leads the Patriots in pressure in hurries with 13, or with 12, I should say. He's second on their team in sacks with 2. And the talk coming out of New England is that Uche is available and he could be had for a mid-round pick. Now, this is the kind of, you look at what the Niners have done in the past with Jordan Willis and Charles Omenihu. They got guys who they liked in the draft who could help them off the edge, and they were younger guys with upside potential. That's Josh Uche. They haven't gone the big ticket item for Burns or Hunter or somebody where they're trading multiple number 1s. They've gone with the guys who have potential, who they think can fit their system. Uche can fly. He's a little smaller than your Niner typical defensive ends, but I think that's a good thing. It may help them against some of the more mobile quarterbacks that they struggle to bring to the ground. I think Uche would be a phenomenal addition. That one really is exciting. simply because he flies off the edge. I think he could really fit in a rotation. He would give the 49ers another speedy edge rusher. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, the last position that I'm going to mention here, and I don't know if it's a need or not, is defensive tackle, because you have Eric Armstead, you have Javon Hargrave, you have Javon Kinlaw playing the best ball he's played since he's been a 49er. And the Niners have depth there. You have Kevin Givens, you have Kalia Davis, but a couple of guys out there that could potentially impact their situation are veterans. The New York Giants, Leonard Williams. Now he makes $18 million and he's a free agent at the end of the year, but it probably wouldn't cost you a whole lot. It's just a matter of, could you take on that salary? The Niners have $40 million in available cap room, but their stated goal is to roll a big chunk of that over to next year and to give some of that to Brandon Ayuk. So how much are the Giants willing to pay of Leonard Williams' contract? Could that come together? Bleacher Report is speculating that the 49ers may want Leonard Williams from the Giants. So that's an interesting one. And the other interesting one is DJ Jones. Denver's going nowhere. DJ makes a lot of money as well, though. And, the 49ers didn't sign him because they couldn't afford him. Can they afford him now? I don't know. Would Denver be willing to pay some of that contract down? I don't know. I do know this: DJ Jones is as strong as almost any defensive tackle, against the run on the inside. And if you added DJ Jones, I think your run defense up the middle would clearly be better. I mean, he's strong at the point of attack. He can come off of blocks. He's a proven run defender. Now, he also physically has to be checked out because he missed last week's game with a knee injury. And, that's a big concern. How healthy is DJ Jones? But that I'd be looking at both those guys. If you really felt like you could afford them, they're both kind of expensive. But Leonard Williams and DJ Jones would be on my short list of guys that I would be very interested in at the trade deadline. So just to review, and then let's not forget also one other edge rusher. The Titans are 2-4. And as I mentioned, John Lynch and Rand Carthon get along. How about Arden Key? Arden Key is now there. And Arden Key was really good in this defense a year ago in that NASCAR package, rushing inside or from the outside. If you're just looking for another guy up front who can play a little in, little out, rush the passer, get after it a little bit, Arden Key could make sense. So just to review, I don't think Surtain is reasonable. I don't think it's a realistic goal. I don't think Brian Burns or Danielle Hunter are realistic either. I don't think it's realistic that the 49ers could find, an offensive tackle that's better than Colton McKivitz. So what are you looking at? You're looking at maybe a couple tight end options in Zach Ertz and Mike Gesicki. You're looking at maybe 3 cornerback options in Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jalen Johnson, and Dante Jackson. You're looking at maybe 3 low-cost defensive end options in Arden Key, Carl Lawson, and Josh Uche. You're looking at maybe one or 2 receiver options in Rondale Moore or Kendrick Bourne. And you're looking at maybe a couple of defensive tackle options if you feel like you need help there in Leonard Williams or DJ Jones. Some people have suggested running back. I saw some articles this week connecting the 49ers to Saquon Barkley. I don't know that. I don't know that that's realistic either. That seems unrealistic as well. James Conner's another running back that they say is out there. I don't know that that's realistic. But yeah, I would say tight end, cornerback, defensive end, maybe defensive tackle, maybe wide receiver. If you said, what would be a really nice trade deadline haul for the Niners, I would say, hey, if you could get Sean Murphy-Bunting from Tennessee, and Josh Uche from New England, to me, those are the 2 guys that I think probably could impact your situation the best. When you factor in cost, what it's going to cost to actually acquire them, what their contracts look like, what your roster looks like, your desire to roll over as much of that $40 million to next year's cap so you can retain a lot of your guys, sign Brandon Ayuk, so on and so forth. If you said, what do you think is the most realistic options for the 49ers at the trade deadline? I would say Sean Murphy Bunting out of Tennessee and Josh Uche, the defensive end out of New England. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.